Welcome to the HowToKDJ podcast. I'm not with my glasses right now for some reason. Wait a sec. Yeah, for those of you who weren't watching, I just kind of switched and I don't know. I did a little cut there and then my glasses appeared on my face, whatever. So this is my podcast. This is where I talk about a bunch of random nonsense that comes into my mind. And today I have a pretty special one because this is a very big spicy dilemma that I want to break down. A lot of people are probably gonna hate me for this, but who cares? Like this is my podcast. I say whatever the heck I want to say, and if you don't agree, please leave a dislike. I'll be very, very happy to see that because at least there'll be some kind of interaction. Whatever. Okay, so this is the thing. Recently, right? First of all, I had a little debates with a friend of mine. It's not really, I don't know. I'll call him a friend, but it's pretty much just this dude I know here, and he's a pretty good musician. I've seen him a lot, like in a lot of things, like a lot of posts and stuff, and I talk to him. He's from Nigeria as well, and I'm in Dubai, so that's kind of special, I guess. So I was in this weird conversation with him in his DMs and stuff, just talking and stuff, where we got into this weird biased argument, sort of. Like it was a pretty soft one, but it was pretty long. And so I wanted to talk about something, right? From the title of this video, you already pretty much know what I'm alluding towards. But it was interesting, to say the least. First of all, we all want, like, this is gonna sound like a freaking lecture. We all want a society, a world without racism, right? Like it's a harsh thing. It's brutal when there is literally that in a society. When there is racism, when there is like something that just makes people feel inappropriately like biased or like I don't know. Feel bad in general, feel strange. And for those of you who aren't watching right now, I'm trying to Google the actual dictionary meaning of racism, like the actual meaning, because this does also matter. 1 second. So, racism, according to the dictionary, is prejudice or discrimination or antagonism. Antagonism. I don't know how to pronounce. Is it antagonism or antagonism? I don't know. By an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership of a particular racial or ethnic. God, this is freaking long. Basically, racism is just like cultural segregation. It's pretty much seeing a set of people in a negative way, because they don't come from the same community you come from, or because they don't look the way you look, which is pretty much all intertwined in community, because people that are not from the same community usually don't look like they're from the same community. And usually, in the world we live, it's color. It's very easy to just see that in color. You can easily tell, oh, African, usually black, so African, black. I don't know, American, usually white, so American, white, or British, usually white, so British, white. So pretty much black person, white person, different parts of the world, different communities, whatever, yada yada. Pretty much my whole debate with this guy was that, look, my whole argument with this guy, not a debate, I didn't have a debate with him, but I was kind of like, listen to this analogy, right? I saw a video online where I was like, there's this white guy, straight up just a white dude. I don't know where the heck he's from, but like he sounded American, so probably America. It was this white guy who sang in this like very, very much Afro beat song, like a very African, usually Nigerian type of music. And he was like really good in it, and he sounded great. Then I sent it to this dude that I said as quote unquote my friend, or I'd like to consider him my friend, I guess. And you know what's crazy? The first immediate reaction this guy had was like, but why is he appropriating African culture? That was literally the first thing he said. And in my mind was like, wait a minute. First of all, I was like, do I get into this kind of debate with him? You know what? I was kind of less busy. It was early morning, so I was like, you know what? Let's discuss. And I was like, wait, what exactly do you mean cultural appropriation? And it was like, yeah, this dude is pretty much like he's copying our music. He's copying Nigerian music. He's copying what we started, what we made, and he's like doing it. And that's cultural appropriation, straight up. That's literally what it is. And I've always understood in general that, look, if you like, because the whole thing is everyone wants a world without racism. If you truly want a world where everyone can live in peace and harmony, you have to let go of these boundaries. You have to let go of these brackets that we put ourselves into, where we have a culture of people and another culture of people who don't want to intermingle with each other's cultures. And I'm like, there are two sides to this. The first side is literally just behaving like people from another culture. A lot of the time, this comes with some backlash and some acceptance, where some people are like, that's fine, you can do whatever you want. I'm even happy that you're basically acting like us, because it's cool that you see us so, I don't know, in a nice way, that you're acting like us. Then there is the bad side, which is societal and commercial and financial reason, which is the fact that if you act like someone who is doing something like music, that he's trying to get some success from that, but you're acting like them, and you're technically from a culture that's more powerful than them, financially, everywhere, then what happens? You can basically just take that and then do it by yourself. You can do it, like, you can just take that and you eliminate the need of that person, of that culture at first that you took it from. Now, that's the argument a lot of people usually have for this topic, and I fully understand why. And I don't want to go too deep into that side, because that's a little more specific, and it's more of a wishy-washy way of thinking, because you're like technically being very pessimistic. If you really think about it, because you're like, oh, if they behave like me, then pretty much they're just gonna steal what I do, and they're going to eliminate me from the system, and they're just going to take over. But come on, right? This is the same mindset of a person where, like, you're behaving like you don't want a thing, but you're acting like you want it, or technically the opposite. You're acting like you don't want a thing, but you do genuinely think everyone else wants it. Like, I don't know how to explain this more, but pretty much think about it like this. If you want a world where everyone just kind of interacts, everyone flows together, everyone does everything together, there's no like prejudice, there's no racism, there's no bias, there's no cultural anything. What do you need? What's the world look like? That world looks like a world where no one would react poorly towards anything. No one would behave a certain culture. There will be no culture in that world. You know what I'm saying? You can't have a world like that, because there is just no culture. And that's the part that people need to understand. When there is no culture in a world, that's when there is no racism. And that's where the topic starts. That's where the whole video starts, because this is now my whole talk, my whole discussion is, if you want a world without racism, you want a world where no one subjugates anybody, no one segregates, no one has no one discriminates or has prejudice or antagonism towards any individual, any community, or any set of people, you have to have no set of people. You have to have no set. Like, there should be no set. And by set, I mean culture. There can't be culture and be race and not be racism. You get what I'm saying? Because the whole reason we call something a culture is because we want to associate that thing to a certain group of individuals. And when we do that, what do? We eliminate everyone else from the chance of using that same thing. And when you eliminate everyone else from doing something, what are you doing? You're being racist. Clap for yourself. That's exactly what you're doing. And that's the problem. That's a big problem. Why is this a big problem? Why is this such a big deal? Because a lot of people don't know how to balance. They don't know how to balance what's the right thing or what's the wrong thing, what should be acceptable and what should not be acceptable. They don't know how to do that. Because to them it's like, okay, this is a thing I started, so therefore I should own this thing, right? It's kind of the same thing with households. Like, you have a house and you have children, you own that house, you own those kids because you created them and everything, so they're part of your family. And this is where things get dicey, because the reason there really can't be a world without racism is because there can't be a world without family. Or can there? Vsauce music starts playing, whatever. But like, if you have a world, think about it like this. If you want to have a world where there is no racism, what do you need for that world? Two things. Two specific things. You need not to have any, like absolutely any form of assignment of culture. Like, pretty much no culture has to be assigned to anybody. No culture can be called a certain thing and another culture called a certain thing. You can't have that. Which means what? Which means that no one owns anything. And if no one owns anything, then what happens to people who want like houses? Who buy houses? Like, it's a serious thing. What if you want to own a house? How do you own a house when you can't own anything in this world? And yes, there is the other additional benefit, which is the fact that you have a lease, you have a document that says you own this, you paid for this. Fine. So, okay, we can exempt the house thing. But what about a community? What about a group of people who do something together and work together and do all that? You can't have that anymore. And that's one of the ones where I'm like, yes, this is absolutely what's necessary to have a world without racism. Because if you want a world without racism, you can't have cultures. You can't have sectors. You can't have sets of culture. You can't have sets of people. That wouldn't work anymore. You can't have freaking acting casting, like cast calling. What do you call it? Role casting, whatever. Pretty much in acting, when they ask for it, we need a 6 foot something black African male, blah 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 blah. You can't do that anymore, because in a world without racism, everyone is just a person, and that's it. That's how deep it goes. And God, oh boy, that's just pretty much impossible. Why is that so impossible? Because it doesn't work. It doesn't work in any world. It doesn't work in any community. It doesn't work in any culture, because it just doesn't work. And that's a problem. You know, this is one of those things where I'm like, a lot of people will argue for something, but I'm like, how exactly do you think that would work? Unless you are willing to change your mind about the whole culture thing. Now, getting into cultural appropriation, which is the whole reason for this topic, even though I technically named it a certain thing, but like cultural appropriation generally, let me again look at the dictionary meaning, because I always like to use the dictionary so that people don't go, oh, he's just making things up. No, I'm using the dictionary now for this particular terms because these are dicey topics, right? Cultural appropriation is, according to I'll use Wikipedia first. According to Wikipedia, cultural appropriation is the inappropriate or not unacknowledged adoption of an element for or other elements of one's culture or identity by members of another culture or identity. Pretty much, you inappropriately take other person's culture and make it your own. Now, I have two arguments with that first topic that I talked about with that friend that I had about the music video that was done by this white guy. That guy wasn't appropriating culture. Why is that so hard for people to understand? He wasn't. He didn't do anything inappropriate, which is the meaning of cultural appropriation. He wasn't being inappropriate, and he wasn't being unacknowledged. People always go like, but then there's also the fact that he didn't grow up like you, so he shouldn't have the same kind of things that you have and go through the same things you go through. I'm like, why though? Why are you trying to keep a certain thing or art or something away from other people if you don't want racism? And this genuinely like irks me, because I'm like, if you technically want a world where there is no cultural appropriation, it's either you want everyone to be racist or you want there to be no cultures. And that's it. That's where I always go. Personally, obviously, I don't want everyone to be racist, so I have to go for the other thing. I logically want everyone to have no culture, because when you have no culture, everyone's culture is equal. That's the thing. When there is no difference, then everyone is unique. And at the same time, everyone is a person. Everyone is just there. There is no segregation. There is no seclusion. There is no group. There is no culture. There's no cults. There's no anything like that. And also, weirdly enough, cult is a word coined from culture. I never really knew that for some reason. I don't know why I didn't think of that, because it's cult, culture. Of course it is. But I never thought of that. If that's blowing your mind as well, please, I don't know, write down in the comment below. But that's kind of blew my mind when I first heard that cults and culture are from the same thing, whatever. But this is the thing. When you want a culture, when you want a world, a society without cultural appropriation, you have to have no culture. Because and not having culture, so some people feel like, okay, so we're all just cavemen pretty much. We don't have anything special about us. No. I mean, you can't have a culture because you can't have things owned by only one set of people. You can't have Afro music owned by Africans. Even though it's called Afro music, you can have these titles. You can have Chinese music. You can have, I don't know, reggae. You can have all these things. You can have all these things, and they're owned by certain sets of people. Or sorry, they started by certain set of people, but it can't be owned by anyone. Pretty much the same way, I don't know, Steamboat Willie in the Disney Mickey Mouse stuff is now for public domain. Everything has to be public domain, especially when it's not a thing that directly, ruins the society, which is the main issue a lot of people have with this, where they're like, if you want to have no culture, then technically that would ruin a lot of societies, because technically, whatever, all these yada yada. My whole conversation with that thing, my whole discussion with that is, you can have a community without these things. You can do that. You can have a community without, without a group of people called the Africans, or the black, or the white, you can have a community like that. It's possible. It's possible for society to run that way. You just have to figure out another way around it. And that's one of the issues a lot of people have with like changes in society and a lot of things, because we're like, if we changed it immediately, of course there will be issues. That's kind of obvious. Of course society wouldn't function immediately properly. You have to do these things slowly. And I'm going to talk about this in my next episode, when I'm going to discuss like why, just as a little teaser, I'm going to talk about why for energy, why solar energy and stuff is so slowly being implemented, like why it's so slow and why it's so hard to like actually fully enforce that, and the reasons why that's a slow build up. Like, I'm going to talk deeply about that, but it's a really fun topic, because as much as it's a very basic conversation, there's a reason it's very fun, and I'm going to talk about that very soon. But like, this is the thing with societies: you have a certain culture of people doing a thing. Have a community of people that do a thing, and then you're like, I don't want any other community of these people to do that thing. You are technically racist. And the reason I'm saying technically is because if I say you are racist, people will go, so you're just calling me racist. No. When I say you're technically racist, people go, oh, so according to definition, I am racist. Human beings, freaking brains. And this is one of those things I love about myself, is the fact that I've gotten to a point where I'm getting better and better at it anyway, but like, I'm starting to really understand people, Like, before in my life, I've always kind of understood people, kind of understood how people think and how people, but now I'm getting to a point that I genuinely feel like I understand a lot of people, and it pisses me off more and more when I realize that I understand why they do some things. And it's like, oh God, why do we have to? Why do we have to do these things? But it's because that's why we're human beings, So pretty much my whole thing here is just, if you want a world without racism, if that's what you're looking for specifically, you can't call out cultural appropriation and all this garbage, especially when it's not harmful. Because if you're deliberately appropriating a culture in a wrong way, if you're like appropriating Chinese culture and you're basically just being stereotypical and doing all this very offensive stuff, offensive things that are actually negative, then I can understand why you might call that cultural appropriation. I understand that fully. That makes perfect sense, because yes, some things are straight up, that's real racism when it's negative. We all have a little bit of racism inside us. As long as you have a family, you technically have racism. Like, that's the thing. You can't bring in anyone into your family and just go, yeah, that they are as important as my father, my mother, or my brother, or my sister. You can't really do that. And as long as you can't do that, then you are inherently slightly racist, because that's pretty much it. That's how race works. You can have, especially not like, think about it, the average Nigerian watching this video or something, you wouldn't just accept some random ass Czechoslovakian man to just freaking come into your family and just act like one of you and be treated equally as you are. You wouldn't accept that. The reason you wouldn't accept that is not because of logical anything. No, it's because you have a culture. You have a tiny bit of culture in your family, and you know that this family is ours. It's mine. It's owned by us. And because it's owned by you guys, then that person would technically be appropriating your culture, meaning that you're being racist towards that person because you don't want that person to have the same treatment as you guys. So like I said, that's a tiny bit of racism, but that's more familiar stuff. It's more that you just want you want a certain bit of ownership to your family, as everyone does, and that's perfectly fine. And that's not negative in any way. What's negative is when you're acting like a certain group of people. Imagine someone saw how your family was and noticed how you guys were, I don't know, you guys were probably poor or something, and you guys didn't like buy clothes and stuff, but maybe you guys are getting better and better, but they've always known you to be poor and stuff, and they start basically walking around acting like you, and by acting like you, maybe they start joking towards like how your dad picks pennies or something. I don't know, I'm trying to find like a nice analogy, like pretty much them ridiculing the fact that your dad is like poor, or your mom is poor, or you guys don't really have that much money, and how you guys have to ration out food and stuff. Now that's what I would call actual racism, or in other words, cultural appropriation, because that's what cultural appropriation is. That's what racist cultural appropriation is, which is real cultural appropriation, because that's negative. According to the dictionary, that's inappropriate. And when it's inappropriate, fine, that's negative, that's not a good thing. If some white guy was trying to analyze black people music, and he just made a lot of noise, and he was just berating it, like he didn't even try to make it look like he was joking, he just made a lot of noise and made a lot of like garbage and stuff, and this guy's clearly just ridiculing it. Because there's a way to tell when a certain group of people, when the person is trying to just ridicule you and a person is joking with you. There's a difference. There's a very subtle difference. But when you can tell, and it's pretty clear this guy is just straight up ridiculing people from your area, your kinds of people, your culture, then what happens? That person is being racist. That person is appropriating your culture. That's actually negative. My problem is when someone just does something that comes from your culture and you're like, I don't really like this because this person is straight up is just behaving like me, and this person is appropriating like my culture and is making that's when it gets, that's where the problem comes in. And that's what I always try to like discuss this, because I'm like, you have to be accepting if you want no racism. You really, really have to be accepting. You have to get to a point where you can just allow people, you can just allow them. You can just say, hey, you are not like us or anything, but you know what? You don't look like us. You're not from the same culture. You didn't originate from the same place I originated from, even though technically we all originated from the same thing. But like, let's say back 1,000 years, you didn't originate exactly from where I originated. So fine. You didn't originate from them, who freaking cares? Do whatever we do, act like us, play like us, do exactly what we do, but obviously don't do it with harm, because being harmful is a certain thing. That's racism. That's when it becomes bad. So my whole opinion, my whole conversation, my whole conclusion to this is pretty much, don't call everything anyone else does that's not in your cultural appropriation. That's not cultural appropriation. That's just people behaving like people from your side. I'm not even going to call it cultural anything, because it's not cultural. If I have to call it cultural something, then what am I doing? I'm being racist, because I'm saying this set of people own a thing. And if you say you own a behavior or pattern or an art and no one else can do that, then you're being racist. Don't you get it? Americans own the whole financial system. British people, Americans, white people in general, they own that financial system. And so, therefore, they don't allow, black people, they don't allow black people to have the same benefits as they have. And people call that racism. If that's racism, then you can't stop other people from also owning things that you own. You can't stop them. You can't say, because one of them is a way of life, and one of them is money, and one of them is the other. You can't break things down like that, because it's ownership. It's all about ownership. And as long as you didn't buy that thing you own, that's the reason I use that house analogy, and I said technically that wouldn't be culture. That wouldn't be like that wouldn't be a sentimental thing. It's just you own it because you bought it, because it's a house. But you didn't buy like an area. You didn't buy the area you were born. You didn't buy a community. You didn't buy that art. You didn't buy that idea. That's the best way to put this. You didn't buy an idea. If someone else likes that idea and the person copies it, it's fine. Notice how people don't talk about, for example, science. People don't say there is cultural appropriation in science, even though technically it was invented by a freaking white man. All of these things we have in science, they came from the Greeks, they came from people after that, and then usually it tends towards white people. But we have black innovators, we have black scientists, we have people from all around the world that are scientists and innovators and stuff. And we don't say anything bad about that because, quote unquote, they are doing it for the greater good. But you have to be accepting of everything if you want a society without racism. That's my whole point. That's my whole topic. You can't have a world without racism where you have cultures. You know, you can't have cultures in a world without racism. You can't say a certain group of people are like my people, but these other ones are not like my people because they don't look like me. They didn't come from the same place I came from. So therefore, those people are. You can't do that. That's what racism is. That's what it actually is. That was fun. That was a stressful conversation to have because I tried to make sure I made my points clear, which is why I repeated myself like 100,000 times. But in case you enjoyed that in any way or you found that insightful, leave a like. Enjoy the video. Definitely try to subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Technically, you guys will see me in the next video. And stay gorgeous, stay beautiful. As always, get out of here.